Hello there, fellow zombie slayers. My name is Stanley557. As Call of Duty Zombies has continued on, we are now at the mode's 17th anniversary. As we know, COD Zombies is a rather confusing, convoluted, and all-around exhausting story to understand. Confused by the events of the Giant, how does a Sentinel artifact work? And what about the whereabouts of Monty and the Shadow Man? Well, questions like that are what we're here to talk about today. And of course, before we begin, a quick thank you to everyone who left an inquiry. If I didn't get to yours, or you had one you wanted answered, please leave them in the comments below. But with that said, let's get started.
Dr. Minty? What? Is he like a bad guy?
Our first question comes from Ricgaytofen, and he asks, I always wanted to understand what the fuck was going on in the Giant and its radios. We can start simple and answer the first half of the question. The main purpose of the Giant is to cause the fractures. By killing Ultimus Ricgaytofen before the events of Jerice, it completely changes the timeline of various worlds, with both their past and their futures. This is shown to us in the comics, with Nacht, Verrucht, and Shinonuma all changing for the better in some worlds, and in BO3, we see how other worlds can be completely changed for the worst, with the Jerice facility developing giant robots, Group 935's continued occupation of the moon base in Horizondrock, and the further doomed and damned worlds of Zetsuba no Shima and Gorod Krovi. The primary purpose of this was to create specific versions of Ultimus Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai, and those could be captured within the summoning key and taken to the house to complete the cycle. As for the radios, they are a whole other story. The radios in the Giant show us how the death of Ultimus Ricgaytofen affected the facility in both directions linearly. We hear stories of Maxis observing Samantha after a teleporter trial she was seemingly a part of, that the facility has been completely abandoned, seemingly erasing the very events of the Jerice massacre, and implying something else very different overcame the facility and its inhabitants, and another radio citing that the Jerice teleporters now travel their subjects through time rather than through space, which is the opposite of what they could do originally unless overloaded. There are also a few radios that seemingly take place from the perspective of Maxis within the house after the events of Revelations. One cites his lonely existence with the children gone, another cites the sacrifice that Ricgaytofen made, and a final one states that the children must be protected. Now, we're still unsure what to make of radios like Ricgaytofen's sacrifice, as that story beat was seemingly cut or transformed into his death in Blood of the Dead, but we'll never actually know, as it doesn't seem to properly line up with what we know about the timeline. And finally, there's a set of radios belonging to Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takeo, each one taking place in a failed version of the Giant where their plan goes wrong and the fractures are prevented. It seems that Primus Ricgaytofen's arrival in the intro is the exact thing that needed to happen in order for the events of the Giant to play out properly. Why he still didn't show up in specific realities is unknown. What's also unknown is how the Primus crew go from Agartha at the end of Origins to scouring the multiverse for 2 years. These are simply things we don't know. Man, I love these first questions where we just get to go completely balls to the walls with the story concepts. The events of the Giant are purposely confusing, and if I'm being honest, the radios are the biggest mystery still yet unsolved in the storyline, even with the existence of the developer documents.
Hey, other me. If you're hearing this, then it means that something's gone foobar. We're going to plan B. Stick to that crap bastard like glue. We need to find out what the hell he has been doing and what he's going to do.
Our next question comes from the RealMinsky, and they ask, dumb question that probably is an easy answer, are the Easter egg songs canon? Ultimus, Victus, and Cut Primus quotes acknowledge them activating up until BO2, and now Ricgaytofen in the Reckoning remembers hearing the ending music for Togdertoten. No, the Easter egg songs are not canon. Elements of the songs and their lyrics are meant to be applied to characters, emotional journeys, and arcs, but I wouldn't really say that they're canon. Dempsey is not actually listening to a rock band in his head. The only song that has a canon backing is Lost from Firebase Sea, as it was seemingly the song that Samantha sang to herself while trapped in the dark ether, and even shows up in various intel bits throughout Cold War. As for Ricgaytofen referencing the Togdertoten song in The Reckoning, I believe this comment is non-canon, and was simply meant as a cute nod to tie the modern story in with the old one as we transitioned into BO6, where that connection became a lot more prevalent.
This is a dream. A bad dream. It has to be. That's what I tell myself, even if it isn't true. What is happening? happening? I don't know. I don't know anything. I am lost. Please find me. Please.
But I don't want you to find me. I will find my own way. That's the only way that it can be.
Next up is a question from Tinhorn, who asks, if Shangri-La is meant to be on Mars, then how did Brock, Gary, and Sally, George Romero's assistant, get there? This is a good one. The events of Shangri-La have been changed and seemingly retconned quite a few times, but for the sake of consistency, we're going to go with the most modern interpretation of the map based on new information brought forth by Astra Malorum. Shangri-La is always meant to be on Mars, and can seemingly be accessed by various dimensional weak points across the planet. One is the Group 935 facility in Siberia, and the other is in the Himalayan mountains. The entirety of the map seems to take place on the Red Planet, and this is further supported by the secret Easter egg on Togdertoten and various side Easter eggs on Astra Malorum, alongside much of the map's iconography being found when you enter the Martian temple during the map's Easter egg.
Wells, I want my money back.
Yes, we did. Oh dear! Behold Mars, faithful companions. Now we must activate the machine that powers this place. The machine is missing a key part. Aegis Terminal may be able to tell us which one.
As for Brock, Gary, and Sally, it appears to be that these figures have quite literally fallen into another world, shifted from their current location by simply looking for the wrong things at the wrong time. This is why Tog takes place inside a pocket dimension within Phobos, with the connection seemingly being that the Siberian facility became a way to access Shangri-La after the eventual outbreak spurred on by the Apothicon blood, with the Keepers and Apothicons using dimensional weak points and places of violence as means to ascend to their temples. This connects Shangri-La to Call of the Dead and Togdertoten. And to go further, it appears to be that entering a specific spot within the Himalayas causes you to become misaligned and taken straight to Shangri-La on Mars. It's a bit confusing, but it's zombies lore backed up with an old world mythology and horror. Figures like Brock, Gary, and Sally weren't just teleported to Shangri-La, they were taken in some cosmic joke where the only punchline is their lives as they are forced to endure this endless loop, which is exactly how the map is meant to be interpreted.
So I started with a simple one. Something about two guys named Brock and Gary looking for Arthur. They finished like dead. Figured I'd start there. Next thing I know, I'm in this jungle, and it's hot and humid, and the sky goes black. Like dark black. I look up. There's an eclipse, and these things start chasing me. Like zombies. Trust me, I know how it sounds. I've been fighting them so long now. I should be dead. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have died, but it just keeps going.
And I guess to follow up this Mars-centered question, we have another one from Draco115, who asks, is the Mars we fight on in Astra the same Mars from the Aether storyline that contains Shangri-La? If we're in the Dark Aether, what about the Mars that exists outside the Dark Aether? Does that contain any ancient civilization? I would personally say yes, but the answer is we're unsure, and until we get further information on the topic, the answer can go a couple of different ways. To preface, the Dark Aether works in a few ways depending on who's writing it and what the focus is on in the Dark Aether storyline. The Dark Aether contains copies of things from the normal world, as backed up by much of what is found in the Dark Aether in Cold War. It can contain people and places that have been pulled into it, as commented on by Nikolai talking about the Cosmodrome and Ashes of the Damned, and people, places, and things have been dropped into it once the multiverse collapsed at the end of Togdertoten, as backed up by Primus Nikolai at the end of Tog. So the Mars we fight on in Astra Malorum could simultaneously be one of these specific outcomes. It could be a version of Mars from the original zombie storyline, a copy of Mars from the Cold War storyline, or Mars is simply missing in the Cold War storyline and it has been permanently pulled into the Dark Aether. But I'm much more inclined to believe it's one of the first two. With that established, we now have to decide if the Martian civilization is from the old storyline or the current one, And due to the undead wearing Keeper robes, I think the implication is that the Mars and subsequent Martian civilization we find in Astrum Malorum is one from the original Aether storyline due to the Keeper's influence on the Red Planet being present, alongside Earth. And because this Mars is unique to the Dark Aether and not a copy, it's safe to say that there probably isn't a Martian civilization on Mars in the normal Cold War world as far as we know. Our next question comes from Sh3ba Spaniel, who asks, how come the Apothicons were never acknowledged by the other denizens of the Dark Aether like Be'lakor? Just to recap from the last time, our understanding of the Dark Aether is that Dark Aether denizens like Be'lakor, Cortifex, and even the Construct have existed in the same Dark Aether as the Apothicons, and could have just as easily invaded Earth had they known about it. But I think the simple answer here is that many Dark Aether beings were unaware of Earth until the collapse of the multiverse at the hands of Nikolai and DaOrgasmatron, with the only ones interested in taking over it were the Apothicons, since the Earth was the gateway into Agartha, which simply wasn't an area of interest for many Dark Aether beings. Moving right along, we have question number 6 from Lechuga U, who asks, in Shattered Veil, we charge up the Sentinel artifact with the essence of the Time Liminal Ghost. In the Reckoning, we see it get activated by the energy of these rocks, I assume is 115. Anywhere in Chaos does it state alternate ways of attaining the Sentinel artifact without a trial? Currently no. In Chaos, Alistair and the Ancients made it very clear that the only way to access and open a Sentinel artifact was to initiate a Sentinel trial. But with modern technology, it's possible Ricgaytofen truly did find a way to charge and open one up by force. In regards to how to actually find one, no, there only seem to be a limited amount of them, and seemingly by the Shattered Veil outro, they match the exact 4 that we know of in the Chaos storyline. So I think by that connection, it is safe to say that the Odin artifact that we see in BO6 is the same one from Voyage. We currently just don't know how these two match up yet.
Beautiful and priceless though it may be, it is utterly useless. Not unlike Pandora's box, the artifact cannot be opened without a proper key. Brute force accomplishes nothing. A hammer won't even leave a dent. It is completely impenetrable. But that is for protection, for he is sent on a journey, one that cannot be stopped once started. That is why they must have the key.
Let's double this one up too by answering another Chaos-themed question, this time coming from Occulta127, who asks, in Chaos, do the people that turn into zombies we kill during the trials actually die? And if they do survive, since the trials happen in the blink of an eye to non-trial participants, would they all just be bloodied up and confused following a trial completion? As shown off in Voyage, when a trial is completed, all inhabitants turn back to normal. Disoriented, but no memory of the trial. It is why the Order followed the trials wherever they went. For example, at Alistair's party, they killed everyone once the trial had concluded, and burned down his mansion to make his disappearance easier to hide. But assuming the story would have continued post-Ancient Evil, I 100% believe that the entire city of Delphi was restored once the trial had concluded, and now there is an entire city trapped underground with a host of ancient Greeks confused as a centuries-long trial finally concluded.
Please, I beg of you, set us free.
Alright, rapid fire. This one comes from Cygif F, who asks, what was Richtofen's reason for making S.A.M in the first place? In The Reckoning, it is revealed S.A.M was originally created to control Dark Aether breaches that continue to plague their facilities, and he used Samantha's DNA and brainwaves as a base since Samantha Maxis was already attuned to the Dark Aether energies. He had hoped to control her, but her insistence on becoming a human once again drove her to madness, thus creating the story of Black Ops 6.
The ceaseless outpouring of hostiles have wreaked havoc throughout the facility. We cannot track where they will open and what nightmares they might unleash. People are dead, some of whom will be difficult to replace. I've kept the rumor mill from reaching the outside world. Incidents of this nature would undercut investor confidence and jeopardize future rounds of funding. I commend Blanchard for not losing faith in me as he fights this war. No end in sight, and yet he just keeps going. But even he tires. Even he will need rest. We need a self-regulating containment protocol. Something that could manipulate the Dark Aether itself. Yes. We have to fight fire with fire. Question is, do we still have enough people left alive to build the damn thing?
Douglas Redmont asks, I have a question. You know when you load in Black Ops 3 Zombies and you see your character sitting in front of a campfire? Who made this place? Why does it exist? Or existed, I don't know. The place is the Frozen Forest. In the campaign, it's a realm created by the AI Corvus as a neurological place for life and death. In Zombies, the Frozen Forest is a place at the edge of time, where Monty can't find her characters, and is used as the home base for Nikolai to perform the events of Ricgaytofen and collapse the multiverse. If you want to get theoretical, it could 100% be an interpretation of Limbo, a literal place for beings stuck between the realms of life and death, and it is only through death that they are able to finally escape and be freed. Next up is a question from the Insane Gamer 52, who asks, did Aetherium replace Element 115 in the current universe, or are they like separate things with similar attributes? Originally, I assumed Aetherium was an evolution of Element 115, but MWZ and BO7 make it pretty clear that Element 115 is an entirely different substance that exists alongside Aetherium, with both substances showing up in MWZ and Ashes of the Damned in BO7 in particular. Currently, their use cases are near identical, but Aetherium has a parasitic relationship with most life as it tries to assimilate and consume, whereas 115 is simply a radioactive rock with the ability to corrupt and influence living things. Similar, but distinct.
Element 115. Worth its weight in gold. Und then some.
Coming from Swimmyss, he asks, to the best of your ability, can you explain the nav cards and nav card tables from BO2? I remember being interested in them growing up playing, but they never really felt like they had a solid function or purpose. The nav cards in Black Ops 2 are meant to connect each of the polarization devices between Transit, Die Rise, and Buried. The Transit nav card table required the Buried nav card, Die Rise the Transit nav card, and Buried the Die Rise nav card. And once connected, they will allow you to complete the Black Ops 2 Super Easter egg. For context, in the story, the Transit polarization device was requested by Ricgaytofen during Project Stapler, and it's unclear who built the other two towers, but what is clear is that when connected, it allows the user to transfer etheric energy across the Earth. And in narrative, it is used by both Ricgaytofen and Maxis to mend or destroy the Earth based on the ending you choose, with Maxis currently being the only canon ending and setting up Origins.
What? What do you mean, mend the rift? Well, maybe I don't wanna. Huh? Did you think of that?
Coming to us all the way from FNAF, we have our next question from just actual Springtrap, who asks, is the Alcatraz Pocket Dimension only Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge? What about the rest of the Earth? The rest of the US, for example? Are they here too? Ah, Pocket Dimensions. I guess here's a good place to talk about them as any. As described in Mob of the Dead, Blood of the Dead, and Ricgaytofen, pocket dimensions are small places of creation meant to keep something or someone trapped within them. The Alcatraz pocket dimension was created by a partnership between the Warden and the Shadow Man. Through the spilled blood of the Warden and the mobsters, the pocket dimension was created as a trap meant to ensnare Edward Ricgaytofen when the time was right, creating Blood of the Dead and the Broken Cycle. As for Ricgaytofen, we're unsure who created the pocket dimension, but we know it was created specifically for Pablo Marinez and the Victus crew, a hell dimension meant to push them toward the Agarthan device and resolve the paradox. Anyways, to answer the question, no, what you see in a pocket dimension is what you get. So for Alcatraz, all that is trapped within it is the island and the unfinished bridge. Everything else is simply a mirage, always just out of reach. As for Tog, all that remains is the lighthouse and the Siberian facility. Swim too far out, and you'll just come back on the other side.
Their eternal punishment through your sacrifice will ensnare another. His ultimate reckoning.
A trap for another.
Our 13th question comes from DaOrgasmatron. I can't say that. Our 13th question comes from DaOrgasmatron. Our 13th question comes from DaOrgasmatron. Do we know for sure if Monty died in the multiverse collapse or not? He died to the Dvorak. DaOrgasmatron. Do we know for sure if Monty died in the multiverse collapse or not? We actually do know for sure, and the answer is no. As stated by Nikolai in the Tog outro, elements like Monty, the Shadow Man, Element 115, Apothecons, and the Keepers were all banished to the Dark Aether. and just like what happened to the Apothicons when they originally vanished, they mutated and evolved. And I have a feeling that might play a role in the upcoming BO7 DLC season, so stay tuned.
When we are gone, so too is everything that spewed forth from the Aether. Element 115, the Apothicons, even Monty himself, all of it will be banished to where it belongs. The Dark Aether.
Next up, we have a question from Peter Villianto606, who asks, how do the events/characters of Ancient Evil not contradict Chaos's inclusion in the Dark Aether storyline? How does the existence of mythological characters, Perseus and Medusa, and locales, Mount Olympus, not contradict all the elements being from the Dark Aether? A lot of Chaos can simply be rolled into the Dark Aether storyline. Greek gods, Dark Aether gods. Greek myths and legends, well, those can easily be changed into humanity simply fending off Dark Aether creatures that spilled into our realm. Mount Olympus, well, that could just be a Dark Aether castle. Prima Materia, well, that's just an exo-element that now exists alongside 115 and Aetherium. The Dark Aether was more or less written in a way that allows Chaos to complement many of Dark Aether's elements without outright stepping on them. Now granted, in BO6, the lore of the Sentinel artifact got changed for the sake of the narrative. But besides that, many of Chaos's mysteries and characters just translated right over seamlessly. The Realm Beyond can easily be reattributed to the Dark Aether, and that honestly better fits the story's themes of old world mythology and the monkey's paw-like effects these quests usually conclude with. But also, another theory that's been proposed is that Chaos is simply another multiverse inside the Aether storyline that got re-rolled into Cold War when everything got merged together, which is also a possibility. This puts Chaos in its own universe in the multiverse from the Aether storyline, but then also allows it to exist in the Dark Aether universe while rolled in with everything else. Which is what maybe happened.
Reminds me of when I studied the writings of Alistair Rhodes, an amateur demonologist and personal hero of mine. About different objects of power that he called...
And for our final question, we have one from Helios1097, who asks us, what even are the Shadowsmiths? Seeing them become the focus of BO7 was genuinely out of nowhere for me, and I've seen so many people excited that the game was going to focus on them. Alright, let's get into some Shadowsmith lore. The Shadowsmiths are entities we've been hearing about as early as MWZ. Following the death and destruction of Ava Jansen's alternate Dark Aether twin, the Entity, she is alerted to a being of creatures known as Shadowsmiths that are searching for and attempting to capture her. Initially, the Shadowsmiths were presumed to be a single entity or small group of entities that resemble the Shadow Man and or Monty. But following Black Ops 7, we know now that the Shadowsmiths are simply pets for a being known as the Warden. What he wanted with Ava is currently unclear, but now in Black Ops 7, we know that Shadowsmiths are tortured souls that do the bidding of the Warden and hold great power within them. But most of the anticipation for their inclusion was the misconception between the Shadowsmiths, the Warden, and the return of a supposed Monty Shadowman merge. And those are 15 more questions answered about the COD Zombie storyline. This series gets more and more convoluted by the year, so I hope you learned a thing or two from all of my explanations. Thank you to everyone who submitted their questions. If you have any of your own or thoughts about what you heard today, then leave them in the comments section below. But with that said, thank you all so much for watching. And remember, keep on slaying.